Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another round of Fierce Changers. I feel like this should potentially be the last of these figures we see, but they did surprise us with this wave, so who really knows, I guess. But this time I'm going to do things a little differently, because normally I would review these guys individually, but since one of these two sets is a straight-up repaint of a previously released set, I'm just going to piggyback it into this review with the Ceratosaurus and Ankylosaurus Bumpy set, but we also, of course, have the Carnotaurus and Stegosaurus set here to the left. I didn't think anybody would truly be interested in an actual review of the Carnotaurus and Stegosaurus set since we have reviewed it in the past. Just, again, it's a new paint variant, so I figured I would just throw it in here for the, 5 people that might be intrigued in seeing that. But again, I am pretty happy about the fact that we have a Ceratosaurus in this line. That's definitely not something that I saw coming. And Ankylosaurus Bumpy as well, because everybody loves Bumpy. Why wouldn't you? So let's go ahead, pop these out of the boxes, and we're going to jump straight to a closer look at both right now. So because this is the only truly new figure, at least sculpt-wise, we'll begin with the Ceratosaurus. You can see the Ceratosaurus looks pretty cool, and what's very interesting about this one is we actually have more of your standard Ceratosaurus, more so than a Jurassic World version, because with the Jurassic World version you only have the nasal horn normally. But here on this one, we kind of have the horns up here on the eyebrow area, which is intriguing to see that. That's definitely not something I was actually expecting. But you can see we have a green for the face. You've got some red tones running over the horn and then down here into the face a little bit through the palate and everything. The nostrils are sculpted nicely. The detailing overall actually looks really good. You have a greenish tone for the eye, a black pupil, nice gloss coat added to it, and then we also have, maybe I can get it open. Wow, that was actually really stuck. We have an articulated jaw for our Ceratosaurus. You can see we actually have gray tones for the teeth, which is a little different than what you often see from Mattel. I actually really quite like that. Definitely a little nice change of pace there. And then you have a pinkish tone for the tongue. No coloration on the inside up there on the top, but it does look pretty decent. The teeth are also sculpted fairly nicely, and the jaw, as you can see, articulates really, really nicely. You've got some ridges picking up here, kind of like some osteoderms and stuff, moving down through the top of the head, down into the body of our Ceratosaurus. As you move down into the body, you see them basically following along the back of the dinosaur here, like the osteoderms running down, but the ridges running down along the spinal column. You have the body transitioning to a brown, with the green that we see on the face kind of breaking up and just, patterning over the back, but then it kind of overtakes the body again as we lead out into the tail. So it is nice, as always, to see color from head to tail on a Mattel figure. As you move down into the arms, this is always where they lose me the most, because the arms look horrendous. If you look at the figure from the front, it kind of looks like it has fingers, because it has it sculpted out in a way where it looks like fingers, but when you look at it from the side, now it just looks like it has feet for hands, and they're backwards feet. So the transforming aspect of these figures, there's no real way around it, I would imagine, where they're going to be able to do this in a way where it looks genuinely good. It's always going to look awkward. And again, you can see that we don't have any painted nails or anything like that for the figure, which I feel like they could have at the very least painted the nails. They do on the hidden hatchers. And then the underside, we've got a nice bumpy underside for our Ceratosaurus, because of course that is Bumpy the Ankylosaurus under there. So I'm going to go ahead and transform this quickly so we can get Bumpy out here and take a look at Bumpy. It's always a pain to do this because I always forget what I got to do to get this done. So we have to move the limbs out of the way, open both sides, swing the head out, swing the tail out. Maybe I have to go the other way. Yeah, there we go. So now we've got that out, and then we have to get this tail out. I'm sorry if I'm doing this in the most jumbled way ever. There we go. We now have our dinosaur switched around, and then we just have to reposition the legs and everything for the Ankylosaurus version, and then you basically just push the toes in. And although these rear legs are not in the perfect spot, there we go. We now have Bumpy out and looking pretty cool, actually looking really angry. But you can see the sculpt is fairly decent for Bumpy as well. Again, the skin texture looks quite nice. You've got the nostrils, the eye painted there with a yellow and a black pupil, looking really mad. The spikes here on the head are painted out with a light gray. The beak is also painted with a light gray as well. And then, of course, you have her classic bluish tone moving along the back. You have some speckles that have been applied. Unfortunately, the armored scoots are not painted. But as you move out into the tail, again, you have that blue following out, and then the club tail out here, which is painted with a gray. And then, of course, the underside is then going to be the Ceratosaurus that we had just seen. And the feet look a lot better, of course, once you have it in a quadrupedal pose. Whatever dinosaur is the second one that you get, I always feel like the figures look way better as far as that version goes. But Bumpy looks pretty fun. Then we have the Carnotaurus version, and you can see the Carnotaurus is basically, again, the same figure we had previously. You're not going to see any differences as far as that goes, so we don't need to go over the sculpt, just the paint apps. And we start with a green for the face and a yellowish tone for the eye, black pupil right there, and then you have a lighter tone for the lower part here of the dinosaur, the lower jaw. As I hit the camera, you again have a gray for the teeth, which I really do quite like that. And you can see a pinkish tone for the inside of the mouth that does not run up to the upper side. The jaw, I think, on the Carnotaurus is a little more awkward. It's also actually a little loose, which is surprising. That's not something you usually see from Mattel. Still works nicely, just seems like it's a little bit dangly. But as you move back, you have that green following along as it starts to taper away. And in almost typical Mattel fashion, the coloration is non-existent from that point out. We basically just have this lighter tone for the body color. There is a speckling on it, though, which you can see. But again, that's it. There's really no other coloration for the Carnotaurus. So the first version, in my opinion, is definitely the better of the two. I'm going to transform this really quickly. Not something you guys really need to see a second time, because I'm sure it was shaky enough the first time. And there we go. Again, the legs are not positioned correctly quite yet, but we'll get them there over time. We basically just want to take a look at the coloration, and what a weird color for a Stegosaurus. I did not see this one coming. Again, when these first popped up, I didn't really take too much of a closer look at them. I knew it was something I was probably going to pick up because I have all of the others, but I'm very intrigued by this one because we have such a dark tone for the face, like a very dark tone of gray or maybe even a black. You've got a red eye with a black pupil, so the Stegosaurus looks about as angry as it could possibly get. Definitely a killer Stegosaur. And then as you move here, you see that dark tone continue to follow along the body all the way out onto the tail, but then you have an area of green up here on the back that briefly shows up to highlight the plates and an area of the back down underneath the plates. And then you can see how it kind of like patterns down through the course of the coloration of the Carnotaurus. And then that's really about it as far as the Stego colors go, but at least the Stegosaurus looks like it has paint from head to tail, so I guess that's a plus for this one. And again, I definitely think I prefer the first version of the Stegosaurus over this one, but it's very interesting to see Mattel give us such a strange color for a Stegosaurus, such a dark tone overall. But again, not the greatest figure in the world, and I'm very confused still as to why they even repainted this one in the first place. And again, as far as these figures go, I don't feel like we need sizes, comparisons, any of that stuff. This is a size range that we have reviewed repeatedly here on the channel, so at this point you should be very well aware, I think, of the size. So this Fierce Changers, Ceratosaurus, and Ankylosaurus Bumpy figure, as well as the Carnotaurus and Stegosaurus repaint, are just as they always are. They're meh, they're okay, they're not the greatest thing in the world, but at this point, we come into these Fierce Changers very much so knowing what they're like, so I don't feel like they're a surprise anymore to anyone. So if you are familiar with these, you know what you are getting into by picking one up. So as far as that goes, looking at them from that point, I would say the Ceratosaurus and Ankylosaurus Bumpy is actually quite cool, and overall is probably one of my favorites from the series as a whole. I think my favorite one completely would be the Allosaurus and Dimetrodon, but this one's right behind it because I love Ankylosaurus Bumpy and I also love Ceratosaurus, so having those two figures combined into one is pretty fun. The only problem again is the fact that it looks as awkward as it gets and is still a pretty ugly figure as a whole, but the sculpt work as far as the fine detail goes is very nicely done, and the paintwork isn't half bad on them either. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And then the Stegosaurus and Carnotaurus, again, it's just a repaint, nothing spectacular as far as the repaint goes either. I'm very unsure as to why that one got a second release, and I don't understand why they didn't repaint any of the others and why the Carnotaurus one was chosen to be this repeat and re-release, but at least it is the Carnotaurus, you know. Of course, me being the biggest Carnotaurus nerd ever, I'm happy to have more Carnotaurus, of course, but it's just very strange to me, especially when they've released so many other figures in this line that were all brand new. Why would they release a different figure that's basically just a repaint? So, I don't know, but this one looks okay, nothing really spectacular. I would say the first version was the better of the two. But if you are interested in picking these up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Amazon.com, because that is where I purchased mine. So make sure you check those links, go grab these if you want them, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.